As is traditional, we'll begin our meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. The reason why I'm sort of stuttering is I'm looking for a young person. We try to have a young person lead us in the pledge. Yeah, we can have our student rep. Would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? That'd be great. Thank you. Here we go, guys. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. After the Pledge of Allegiance, we sometimes, where appropriate, try to draw our attention to things which are important to our families and to the families of the city. And I know Vice President Elliott and I were talking earlier today about a recent tragedy, and I know she wanted to talk about it.
Want to give a couple of things. First of all, let me just say, we had a student who was missing, but I believe the student was found. And I want to just make sure that our community knows that as parents, we have to be careful that we know where our children are, because they are being kidnapped and their organs are being harvested. There are more than, I know, 300 black women, black girls that have been missing. And so I want our community to be aware that there are people out there who will kidnap you, people who are being taken in broad daylight. And it's just very important that our families are very mindful of where their children are. So don't just say, parents, that, well, you know, they are here, they're somewhere. You cannot afford during these days and hours to just say your kids are anywhere, because there are people who are taking your children. They are, this whole sex trafficking issue is huge, as well as harvesting of organs from particularly with black kids. And so it's important that we know where our children are. So please, parents, make sure you know where your children are for their safety. Thank you. And the other thing is that I want us to take a moment of silence. As you all know, that we had a death of one of our students at Edison High School, Zidane Wright, which was such a tragedy. And we'd like to take a moment of silence, please. We honor his family, and our prayers go with the family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. I had the occasion, and I know others have as well, to go by Edison today. And in addition to obviously sending prayers and love to Mr. Wright's family, we also must turn our attention and focus and energy towards the staff and the students of Edison. Just sitting there with one or two of them made me really realize that the gravity of the loss goes, of course, way beyond his family. And if you look at the eyes of any staff member in that building, you could see the enormity of the loss. So as we pray and throw up positive thoughts to the Wright family, Lord knows they need those prayers. Let's not forget the staff that are out there, and Superintendent Dade, thank you and your team. I know Ruth, I don't know all the people that are out there doing the good work that you are, but we thank you for that good work. And we also, by the way, pray for you all, because to provide mental health support to people who are experiencing such a tremendous loss cannot be an easy thing to do. So Ruth, I'm looking your way, but I realize that the board realizes that there are a lot of good people providing those services, and we thank you and the superintendent and all those folks who are trying to provide the support that is needed over on Colfax Street and throughout the district. So again, on behalf of the board, thank you. Acceptance of the minutes. We don't have any minutes, is that right, Madam Clerk? We do have a speakers list, and we'll begin with Ms. Clay. I would remind folks, Ms. Clay, come on up, that there's a 3-minute time limit. We adhere to that because we want to make sure that everybody is treated equitably and fairly. So we would ask that when you hear the bell ring, and it's a pretty loud bell, that you conclude your remarks. Ms. Clay?
All right. Can you hear me? Because it seems as though my voice is not being heard. I'm again speaking before the board about racial injustice. You had that teacher, Diane Hamilton, transferred from another building into number 39 school where she abused my son. She shoved him while he was sitting in his seat. Now what? You're gonna shove a 10-year-old child? What did the board do about it? What did the district do about it? Nothing. In my opinion, nothing. They moved her from number 39. They gave her all of from March 6th until the end of the school year with a paid vacation. Okay? A paid vacation. So that means the rest of the racists at Rochester City School District think it's okay to abuse black children. Because nothing happened, because now she's over at number 22 school where the principal didn't know it, the teachers didn't know it, and the staff didn't know that she was an abuser. Now how in the world do you shove a 10-year-old child and his seat moved back a few feet and nobody called the police, nobody called an ambulance, nobody called RPD, nothing, CPS, nothing. But let me have done that to my child, they would have quickly called somebody. I have yet to date not heard one word from you, Mr. Dade. Now that racist interim superintendent Lowengaard told me, maybe you shouldn't bring your kids with you when you speak. Oh, I'm a single black mother. Where am I supposed to bring them? It goes from the top to the bottom. Why are you still employing racists? Or should it be the KKK instead of Rochester City School District? Because she surely has friends, because I had one of her friends call me and yelled through the phone at me the same day I had a first meeting with her about my child. And nothing's been done. She's now, happy-go-lucky, working at number 22. Which is insult to injury because that's 6 minutes away from my home. So you moved her from one building where she abused kids, you moved her to 39 where she abused my son, and now she's at 22 where she's possibly going to do worse? Because first, honey, there's an escalation. There's an escalation. First it's words, then it's actions, and she's taken action against my child. So what are you gonna do? I wanna know. The NAACP is defunct. They're nowhere to be seen. They're not even in Rochester. What are you gonna do as board members about this woman? Oh, y'all had y'all so-called kangaroo court investigation. They call themselves investigators. They cleared her. You cleared her for shoving my son who was sitting in his seat? You cleared her? Oh, but because you done bent over backwards and let the teachers union have more power than you and the parents, we have to stand for her. She told a room full of kids, she called the child's mother the B word. I won't say the whole thing, but she said it. She called that child's mother the B word. You did nothing to her. Nothing. And then Harry Kennedy has the nerve to tell me in same breath, oh, but you're the only one that's gone this far. But we have no other thing about her. What? I found 3 other parents on Facebook that had an issue with her. Now how am I, a single black mother, gonna find 3 other people, possibly 4, and you didn't find one? Not one? Where are you? Are you still having your hands in the sand? Now my children wanted me not to get upset, but obviously I am, because that's my child you hurt.
Thank you, Ms. Clay. Alex White? I know it's, oh, there is.
Let's go.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Alex White. I'm a board member of the Oasis School here in the city of Rochester. And I want to make it clear here something, and that, many of you know of Oasis for the excellent adult vocational education it provides. And I could go on for way more than the 3 minutes talking about that. But it also has a youth program. And this youth program benefits young people under the age of 20 who have dropped out, many of them, of this very district. These children, many of last year there were 215 of them. Many of them with children of their own, and 88% of them started Oasis with a reading or math grade equivalency under 9th grade. Despite this, 63% of them saw a positive outcome. And by that I mean they saw grade improvement, they obtained a job, they received successful job training, or they got their high school equivalency. And most of these students had seen no positive outcome for years. The Oasis has really provided a positive impact on the students' lives who come to this school. You should be proud of that, because Oasis is part of the district. It's part of you. And this is done for $3,500 per student. I want to repeat that number. $3,500 per student. There's an opportunity here for you to find ways to get them back enrolled in the schools, in local schools, transfer to a program at Oasis, and receive state money for these students, which could gain you, even from the numbers from last year, almost $1 million of revenue. Now, on January 16th, we're having a community breakfast. We would like to invite everyone on the board to come out to our community breakfast, to see what we do, to hear what our students have to say to you and what their experiences are like, and to see the wonderful successes that Oasis have been able to provide. We also look forward to working with you at any time you would like to try to find ways in which Oasis can help the schools better, and Oasis can provide their service to more students who are already overage and undercredited. Oasis is in many cases their best hope. So please take advantage of this and look into and find out more about the Oasis School. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Angie Ferris. Angie Ferris.
My name is Angie Ferris. I'm a 4th grade teacher at 54 School. I'm up here right now utterly terrified for the future of our district and the children and families that we serve. Has nothing to do with money. My fear is about their academic, social, and emotional well-being. And for weeks I've been losing sleep over this budget crisis, and I would hope that every single one of you are as well. I'm losing sleep over kids that I have never met before, kids I've never laid eyes on, families I've never spoken to. Okay. I know that some of you have or had kids in the district, and I'm hoping that you're hearing me with the ears of a parent of a child in this district, and not just as board members or a superintendent. Our students already deal with so much, and many of our kids look forward to coming to school, not to learn, but because they'll be safe, they'll be warm, they'll be fed, and they'll be loved. Things that they might not be getting at home. I mean, we have great families in our district, but we have kids who don't have that, and school is family for them. And these kids have bonded with their teachers and other staff members who work with them every single day, and for some kids, these are the only stable adults that they have in their lives. In September, Mr. Dade, you publicly stated that you would cut as far away from the classrooms as you possibly could, but now we're being told that's not what's going to happen. The cuts that you have proposed are going to disrupt and destroy everything that schools have worked for this first quarter. It may not seem a lot in 3 months, just sitting up here thinking about it, but when you're in these buildings with these kids every single day, you know just how much is at stake and what these cuts are gonna do to our kids. The moment that adults are taken out of schools and away from our children is the moment that hundreds of lives are going to be changed, and not for the better. I don't even know if some of our kids could recover from that kind of loss. Many of our students are already at disadvantage because of poverty, their neighborhoods, violence, and other trauma that they deal with every day that we can't even imagine. And this is gonna make it worse. I'm sure that cutting positions looks great on paper, but the numbers don't show what I described. It's nice for businesses to have a healthy bottom line, but I feel like everybody is forgetting that our bottom line is our students. That's our bottom line. In order for this district to be healthy and have a healthy bottom line, our students need to be socially, emotionally, and academically healthy. No amount of monetary savings means much if our kids are hurt in the process. They didn't create this mess, and I know you didn't create this, you walked into this, I understand that, but they're part of this district. They are not part of the problem though, but they are the ones who are going to suffer with these cuts.
Thank you,
Sally,
Ms.
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
The missing student, was it a female?
Yes,
Her initial is MP?
I can't tell you that. But she was found.
Okay.
Yep. Angie Rivera.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Angie Rivera, and I am proud to stand here today as the president of the Rochester Association of Paraprofessionals, representing nearly up to date 800 members of the Rochester City School District. But it's with a heavy heart I speak today in light of your proposal to cut 5% of staff across the board. I cannot stress enough how unacceptable this proposal is for our members and our students. Paraprofessionals are the glue that keeps the district running. We are the educators who work with the students as job coaches, take care of our students with special needs, support classroom instruction. We help discipline. With the discipline, we provide conflict resolution. We manage behavior when they are in school suspensions. We are the safety experts when we assist students going on and off the buses. We are community leaders who build relationships with parents, assist with after-school programs and activities. Many live in and work in this community. 2 weeks ago, 4 of our schools that are struggling were recognized by the state for making significant improvements. That doesn't happen without the tireless efforts of our members, in joint with others, who go above and beyond every day to make our students become a success. Make no mistake, the incredible improvements we have made, they are in jeopardy. The board decisions over the past few weeks are causing incredible stress on my members and will have a devastating impact on the students we serve. I understand that the district is in a budget deficit, but we paraprofessionals did not cause this problem, this current mess. These accounting tricks were happening in central office, not in the classroom with our students. Keep these cuts away from the classroom. And when you get rid of this glue, you will have kids coming back after the holidays missing their favorite paraprofessional, who is not longer around to help them. The teacher now with a bigger class will also not have the much needed assistance. The administrator who needs help with a student is going to miss the support from the worker who understands the needs of the student. And the parent who has developed a relationship with a paraprofessional is frustrated and no longer knows who to speak to to solve the problems. I urge you to rethink your proposal and to keep these cuts away from our students and our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen French.
Hello, my name is Kristen French, and I've worked in the district for 18 years in different capacities at a variety of schools. Cutting 287 is a central office caused crisis. The solution to saving money is not by letting go of our educators. The children and our educators did not create this problem. Cutting 287 crowds classrooms. Cutting 287 diminishes the necessary interventions, enrichment programs, and the essentials to learning. Cutting 287 deprives our students of basic instructional resources and classroom structures that are afforded to the wealthier white peers outside of our city. Cutting 287 means less. Less art, theater, band, music, physical education, clubs, social emotional support, technology, sports, and after-school activities. You say you want to minimize the impact in the classroom, yet 72% of the proposed cuts are within the classroom to teachers, paraprofessionals, teaching assistants. Every penny needs to be cut elsewhere before it is even near the classroom. When we look to balance our own personal budgets because we mismanaged our money thinking we had more money than we actually do, we don't start by taking away our basic needs of food, shelter, wellness, and human connection. You're proposing stripping our students of nourishment, a safe place to learn, and the opportunity for more individualized instruction and connection. Education is not only for learning, but it's an investment in our children and in our city. If you make these cuts, you're choosing not to invest in our children and in our city. You're proposing solving a problem caused by ineffective bureaucracy by cutting teaching positions instead of taking the time to look inward, because doing that requires you to examine central office personnel and their inappropriate behaviors. Instead, you want to take the easier route and let go of 287 RCSD staff mid-year. To the school board, you're elected to this position to represent our children, our families, our taxpayers, our schools, and our staff. It's not a time to fulfill any sort of pinky promises or to pretend that cutting educators' jobs is the best solution for our students. There's an obvious racial and economic divide going on in our county, and our students are the ones that are the most vulnerable. And the decision to cut staff positions deepens that divide. Any plan that involves letting go of any educators before June 25th, 2020 should be immediately rejected, especially because there's already a significant number of vacancies. I charge all the RCSD parents, educators, staff, administrators, community members, and anyone that cares about children to have your voice heard. Write to our school board commissioners, call Superintendent Dade, and show up to the next school board meeting. If you want solutions on how to be more effectively correct the financial faults here at Central Office, I'm very willing to sit down with any one of you to explore beyond eliminating the greatest assets of our student academics' lives.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our speakers list. Next on our agenda are advisory council reports. We're going to begin with Student Leadership Congress.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight I will be reporting on the Student Leadership Congress October and November meeting, as well as the New York State Caucus of Black School Board Members. In our October meeting, which took place October 23rd, we discussed questions and updates regarding the RCSD budget. At the meeting, we were asked to come up with ways to help with the budget issue and figure out where we are spending too much money. We learned that we have a large budget and it's not as easy as it sounds to cut a budget. Recruitment updates. We sent emails and flyers around to different schools in the district. We received a couple of applications from schools. such as Monroe, School Without Walls, and RIA. We watched Superintendent Dade's video about his goals for the upcoming school year. After watching the video, we chose one goal that we thought was a really good idea and would be beneficial to my peers and myself. Friday, October 25th, several other students and myself were part of a panel where we answered questions regarding how we feel about our district and ways that the teachers, staff, and people working in our district help their students feel better about their education. We received great feedback from the people attending this session. They gave us great ideas to bring back to our district and schools. Our agenda on November 20th, included updates regarding the RCSD budget issues and student surveys. We got the results back from our student surveys. We got 239 responses on our survey about the budget. There was a total of 6 questions that we decided would be most beneficial and relevant for my peers to have an input in. For question number 1, which was about the hiring freeze, students had a more neutral opinion. Some students believed that it would be fine to keep the hiring freeze instituted, but other students think it would be wrong for people applying to be kept waiting. Also, that we need more teachers. So the hiring freeze would not be beneficial. For our second question, we asked students about staffing true-ups. 92 students felt neutral about this topic, and 56 students felt this should take place in schools. A good amount of students feel students learn better in a smaller classroom environment. Question number 3 was asking about removing summer school programs that would tie into credit or graduation. 65 students felt that summer school programs should not be removed from schools, and 67 students feel as though it should be removed. Extended learning time was our 4th question, and we were asking if we should remove it from buildings that have it. 63 students were neutral about this idea, and 89 students agreed with removing it from schools. The 5th question was about substitute teachers and if they should be more effective in schools. 69 students disagreed with this statement, and 88 students felt neutral. A lot of students felt substitutes were unnecessary and didn't help the students. The final question asked was about potential staff reduction. 83 students had a neutral feeling about staff reduction, and 72 students disagreed with potential staffing reductions. That students that disagreed with the reduction feel that we need more teachers. This survey is still open for students to respond to, so if you could, please promote the survey in your schools so we can get more feedback from our students. We also reviewed our calendar of upcoming events. An event coming up in the next few weeks on December 6th, which is the first half day of the school year, we will be having a leadership training session about student leadership and learning how to use our voices as students in a powerful, productive way. This session is for all district student government groups. Another event on the calendar that's set is a district-wide student training taking place on February 7th. Thank you.
Excellent job. Next report would be from the Bilingual Education Council. I know we have a written version of it. She's not here? Oh, there she is.
Hi everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I start reading my report, I want to ask you a question. What is the legal age to work in the United States? Can somebody tell me? Nobody knows?
Carl, you want to take a stab at it? No?
Thanks, no, now that I'm looking it up.
That's right. I'm with you.
14 with a work permit. It's 14 with a work permit, the legal age to start.
Good answer, good answer.
Good answer, good answer.
I mean, I got teenagers. You're welcome. 14.
You know why I'm asking this? Because two of my students, because I call them my students because I work with them almost in a daily basis, was sent a consent form home for supposedly a field trip, but it was for go work in a teacher house in construction. These kids are 12 and 13, and I know you are aware of the situation. Because I let you know, guys. I reported this week. But now with my report for today. Good evening. Buenas noches. I'm Irma Gonzalez, the president of the Bilingual Educational Council. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit, I don't got no voice today. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of the council activities representing and advocating. We are bilingual parents, community-based organizations, and educators, representing and advocating for the educational rights to a quality bilingual education for all students in this district. The district leadership and the board ought to recognize and appreciate that the parent groups are volunteer, and we spend a lot of time at district meetings and are requesting the district to compensate parent leaders for the BEC, PAC, CPAC, and MPAC with gas cards or child care. This may encourage other parents to get involved if they feel support. We are still interested in helping advocate in Albany and reach out to whoever we need to help bring more resources for our children. The parent group presidents of BEC, PAC, and CPAC meet with the director of the Office of Parent Engagement. They want to close the gap that exists between the parents and the district, but the lack of transparency and respect made that very difficult. We as parents want facts, no more empty promises. The BLLA is presenting very serious problems that need to be addressed, and we know you are aware of. We request that we are informed of the measures that are going to be taken and to remove the problem. The fastest, the better. The Bilingual Educational Council are proud of the work realized by Raymond Giamartino, Chief of Accountability, for his wonderful response when it's needed. Thanks to the Office of Parent Engagement and the Bilingual Office for all their support and help. The Latino Conference was a success. We was packed. You was there. And the BEC meeting too. It was packed. We have a very good family groups. And BEC is proud to say that they are part of the annual Family Engagement Day. One Family Together. This event is going to be held Saturday, November 23rd. The registration starts at 11 in School 33, located at 500 Webster Avenue. We encourage parents to participate, and the leadership's training, Padres Comprometidos, are being held in different of our schools. And it's good to see the response of the parents. We encourage them to take the opportunity and learn how to advocate for our kids. Our Christmas celebration gonna be on December 10th on the Gun Center, 700 North Street, and everybody is welcome. I wait you, all of you, for the Three Kings Day. So when we know what day and at what time, I'm gonna make sure you receive your invitation. This is everything for today. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. All right, that would lead us to...
Can I uplift one thing?
Yes.
While we're in this section?
Sure.
I did happen to attend a Parent Advisory Council meeting, and I think I shared with some of the board members the opinion of some of the leadership of PAC and the tension between PAC and the district. And it seems to have started with the changes in the resolutions or the bylaws that govern PAC. What I'd like to ask is, could we set up a meeting with PAC and with those board members who are interested in the superintendent and really seek to find some common ground to move the Parent Advisory Council along? Because since I've been here, they haven't reported out to the community, and parents, again, are very important to the success of our children. So is there a way for us to schedule a meeting right after the Thanksgiving vacation so we can come to some kind of understanding of how to come together as a district?
Mr. President. So I think everyone who's been part of this journey knows that it's pretty complex. So there's no one individual that's at fault for our current situation with where we are with our Parent Advisory Council. We are going to be bringing before the board, there's been ongoing work. So the other thing I want to uplift is that there have been ongoing conversations with the Parent Advisory Council, with our district staff, with our various members in the community. And we're going to be bringing various options for the board to be able to move forward on either next week or the week following. So we're very aware of the concerns. My goal when I first met with this group was to say, when I see 5 people in a room representing all the parents of Rochester City School District, I have a problem. So my charge was we will expand the group. When I see the words Parent Advisory Council, I expect a much more robust representation of our school district. So that's what I've been moving forward on. We'll bring options for the board to consider, and then we'll move forward for a much more collaborative environment moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to committee reports. Finance and Resource Allocation Committee, Commissioner Powell.
Given that we meet as a committee of the whole, there is nothing that I can report that you are not all already aware of. Resolutions have been previewed as recently as this past Tuesday. There was no vote of the committee to advance any resolution in particular. They all stand before you essentially without recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Policy Committee, Commissioner Shepard.
The Policy Committee met on Tuesday, November 5th, to consider the presentation, which was titled Becoming a Restorative District, Ending K-3 Suspensions, which was prepared by the Community Task Force. The Community Task Force is a coalition of community members who are committed to improving the climate of RCSD schools. And the group's collaborative efforts have helped secure the district's new code of conduct, anti-racism, professional development, increased usage of restorative practices, help zones, and other school climate initiatives. Members of the task force helped to form the School Climate Advisory Committee, which provided recommendations to the board in September 2018 for updating the code of conduct. One of these recommendations was the removal of K-3 suspensions in district schools. And following up on this effort, the Community Task Force asked for the board to consider a fast tracking of the K-3 suspension ban proposal. This proposal was promoted as a means to assist the district in reducing dropout rates and negative school attitudes and increasing academic gains and restorative practices. The Community Task Force requested that the board instead consider building capacity and adding tools to each school's toolbox of non-punitive procedures. There was not enough consensus at this meeting, so the proposed board policy is going to stay in committee until we are able to get enough board support to move. The policy committee will continue to engage in discussion on the Community Task Force proposal and will revisit the proposal following district administration review. The December policy committee meeting will convene to consider updates to the board bylaws, policy 2300 and policy 2260 on board advisory bodies. The next policy committee meeting will be Tuesday, December 17th at 5:30.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepard. Commissioner Davis, CIGR.
The Community and Intergovernmental Relations Committee met this past Tuesday, November 19th, to review and discuss the upcoming Family Engagement Day on November 23rd. It is this Saturday. From 10 to 11 will be registration, and from 11 to 3 we'll be meeting with commissioners and participating in informational sessions. It will take place at School 33, and it's a collaboration between the board office and the Office of Parent Engagement. Students, parents, grandparents, and community members are encouraged to join the Board of Education Commissioners, Superintendent Dade, and key district leaders for an afternoon of togetherness. Families will have the opportunity to meet with their school's board liaison, district administrators, and other families during workshops and a lunch roundtable. Child care, interpretation services, and lunch will be provided. Following discussion on the Family Engagement Day, the committee concluded a conversation it started in September. The committee agreed to amend the purpose of the Community and Intergovernmental Relations Committee to have both an internal focus and an external focus. So I propose language to add to the committee's purpose that increase community-centered focus while still committing to advocating and lobbying to advance the district's interests. And the new purpose was adopted by the board and will be posted to the district's website. The November meeting also featured a discussion on the Distinguished Educators Plan. The committee discussed the communications plan and discussed strategies for implementation. Commissioners reviewed an updated chart of meeting dates for district schools' PTO and PTA meetings, as provided by the Office of Parent Engagement. The group also discussed commitments for attending these meetings as described in the communications plan. Following this, the committee accepted a procedure for recruiting parent representatives for each of our board committees. This recruitment will launch on this Saturday at the Family Engagement event and will run until January 15th. And the board does encourage all interested parents or grandparents or guardians of RCSD students to submit applications for the position. The main purpose of the Relations Committee is to, again, to make the board members accessible to the public, to have no barriers between those who elected us and the board. And so these are various ways that we're seeking to communicate and be present in the community by having forums, having family days, and also writing articles, Minority Reporter or DNC. So we're trying to find a way to increase public awareness of the role of the Board of Education and to build relationship with all of our stakeholders, and that's students, that's parents, that's grandparents, that's our own staff here, as well as other elected officials. So the committee concluded with a discussion on the board's legislative agenda and the importance of having a shared message with the district administration. Commissioners discussed the board's role in lobbying for the district with Superintendent Dade and considered the hosting of a legislative breakfast. This discussion will continue at the next meeting, February 11th of next year.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner LeBron, I know you wanted to give our colleagues a reminder about the CAFR.
Yeah, yes. So we were given the CAFR this week. The next audit meeting is going to be December 3rd. And questions for the CAFR are due next week, Tuesday, to give staff at least 1 to 2 working days because the holiday is right after and it's, you know, they're going to be off. So if you guys can review it and submit any questions or as many questions in advance. Obviously, we'll have questions as we're going through it as well, but I think it's going to be a critical CAFR to really dive in and really understand how this is all related to our deficit and our finances. Thank you.
Is there any other commissioner that wanted to provide a report? Not all the committees met during this period. We're good? All right. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Dade.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So just wants to start and pause with this picture. This is one of my favorite events so far that I've attended as superintendent. This was our STEAM Day, and you can see the pure joy on these students' faces as they engaged in some virtual reality equipment. So I was there with, I know Commissioner LeBron was there with me, and just seeing the joy on the students' faces along with the staff members and community business partners was a joy to see. Moving on to the most pressing issue facing our district right now, which is our next steps for our financial stability as a system. So a lot of folks were not able to attend and hear directly from me next steps with regards to addressing our deficit and moving forward towards greater financial stability in the RCSD. So one of the things I wanted to be clear on is when we were first made aware of our budget deficit, it was the results of an 18-19 audit, a year-end audit of our 18-19 school year. On September 22nd and resulting on the October 8th, September 22nd, I addressed the RCSD community. And on October 8th, I presented the board with an analysis of where we were at that time. At that time, we were facing a $30.1 million deficit with our best thinking with regards to a review of the 18-19 school year budget. At that time, I was very confident that we would be able to make the necessary cuts that would remain away from the classroom and away from staff reductions. Fast forward to my presentation with our current state last week, the analysis became much more grim. We presented 28 million in reductions in efficiencies at that time. Again, on October 8th, and when I spoke to the RCSD community around that 30 million, we got very close to that number with reductions in efficiencies away from the classroom. So I stand by what I said back on September 22nd and October 8th, because that was our analysis of the 18-19 school year. Last week, I was able to provide further guidance for the Board of Education and our CSD community with regards to an analysis of our 19-20 budget. 19-20 budget is what we're living right now. Past budgeting practices caught up with us this year, which resulted in another $42.3 million in anticipated under-budgeted items in our budget this year. That is why we're discussing a 5% reduction in staffing at this time. So I wanted to be clear with everyone with another opportunity to bring us up to date on where we are. The other piece I just need to make abundantly clear, and where we're really going to have to rally together as an RCSD family, is the 5% reduction in addition to the 28 million in efficiencies that were away from reductions still does not get us to the total amount that we need to recover this year. The 5% reduction in addition to the 28 million still leaves us with a $27 million gap that we would need to address this academic school year. The plan moving forward is not to cut any deeper into our staffing. I know that this absolutely hurts. This is not what I expected to be doing as your superintendent this year in the middle of a school year. And at the same time, we have a fiscal responsibility to stay within our means as within our 1920 budget. I'm not willing to go beyond the 5%, knowing what the consequences are at the school level and for our students and families. So this is where we're going to rally together as a Board of Education and a broader RCSD community to really lobby our state partners to help us with a budget gap, a stopgap for the $27 million remaining this school year. So again, my heart goes out to everyone who has come to me directly. I've heard from every single union group, from RAP to BENTE to ASAR to RTA, and everyone is saying the same thing. Our members matter, and I hear you in all sincerity. There is not a single person in this organization that I want to let go. And at the same time, there's stuff road ahead to address our current budget gap. So I wanted to just provide a brief overview tonight, just to bring everyone up to date on where we are, since a lot of folks weren't able to attend the November 12th presentation I provided to the board.
Why don't you let him finish his presentation?
With regards to details regarding the staff reductions, I anticipate being able to provide the board with an update on our staff reduction analysis of where the cuts can actually occur with more specificity next week at the board HR committee meeting. That's our anticipated date to be able to update the board. Our anticipated date to notify staff who will be impacted by reductions would be the first week of December. More to come, but that's what I'm able to provide as an update at this time. Moving on to much brighter news. This morning I was able to be a part of the Rock the Future State of Our Schools address. And the highlight of that address was recognition of some of our Rockstar parent leaders. So these are 4 of our Parent Leader Award winners. We have Parent Liaison Lisa Alexander from school number 43, Namiz Bascott, who is the PTA president at school 46, Johanna Gonzalez is an active member of the PTA at school number 33, and Catherine Wilson from East High School and one of our very own team members here in our central office team. So it was an honor to join these Rockstar parents this morning for their very well-deserved awards with Rock the Future. A lot of our students also took part in an amazing opportunity earlier this week to explore their options for a college education. The annual HBCU College Fair was held Monday at the Convention Center. A total of 24 HBCUs participated. More than 1,100 students participated that included more than 500 RCSD students. A total of 313 students were accepted on site. And a total of $3.5 million in scholarships were awarded to students. And this included at least 3 full ride scholarships. So I want to thank all of the organizations, fraternities, and sororities that participated, and love seeing this number of 313 students already knowing where they're going to attend at a HBCU next year. So that's fantastic. Going to piggyback off of Commissioner Davis in our excitement to come together as one family for our, I didn't get this slide, the Rock Restorative Symposium. Sorry, I missed that slide in my packet. So I was able to join our staff this past Saturday with Ms. Turner's team engaging in self-care. Our very own Commissioner Hallmark was teaching a class for our Rock Restorative Symposium, so it was a delight to join her that morning. They almost twisted my arm to get me to teach a little Zumba, but I darted out the door before that could occur. But really the message was we have to take care of ourselves so we can be our best selves for our students and those that we look out for. So it was a fantastic event, and I thank all of our Rock Restorative team members for a very successful event. And thank you to our very own Commissioner Hallmark for teaching a little yoga that morning as well. Moving along to our Family Engagement Day, One Family Together. Commissioner Davis provided the details. Details can be found on our website and beyond. So we're looking forward to really engaging our parent community and looking at our vision and mission for the district, helping us define what family engagement really is, and really starting to hear any concerns along with hopes and dreams for our students, our most prized assets in our district. I was absolutely ecstatic to be able to announce two key appointments moving forward. First, we have a new Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Robert Franklin. He's currently serving as Monroe County's Chief Financial Officer. He has roughly 20 years in leadership in a variety of management roles in Monroe County, so we're looking forward to his expertise. He'll be starting with us on January 2nd. And today I was able to announce our new Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Linda Quick. She's currently serving as the Superintendent of Skaneateles. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Central School. Central School. She's a lifelong educator with more than 2 decades of service in public education. She's been a district superintendent of the, good gracious, one of our BOCES nearby. And she has extensive experience working with students and faculty in economically diverse regions. Her start date is January 21st, 2020. I want to pause right here because, as I was saying, I've been hearing a lot from all of our bargaining units and our community at this time. Everything that I'm doing moving forward is in the vein of efficiencies and really thinking of our district moving forward. So while I have 2 new appointments to my team, this is with the departure of 2 deputy superintendents. This is actually a cost saving. So I wanted to make sure that folks knew that this isn't adding to our budget deficit, while that is something that is right out there. SEG appointments are my appointments as your superintendent, and our Board of Education is responsible for making sure that I stay within appropriate budget line items. So I appreciate everyone's support for these key appointments moving forward. They are absolute rock stars, and we're ready to get to work for a better RCSD in the future. So thank you, President White and our board. Look forward to any questions that you might have.
Commissioner LeBron?
I just want to go back to the budget stuff really quickly. So just for clarification, I was doing some calculations, and you mentioned the 42.3, the 28.0, the 9.7. So if I added those up, that came out to, it would leave a balance of 4.6 million if I took those two, added them and subtracted them from the 42.3, but then further down, it says that it still leaves 27.1. So I'm just trying to get clarification around the totality, because again, when I submitted my questions, because I was not here for that original presentation, the total number that was presented for the deficit was 64.6. So then if I added the 42.3 plus the 27.1, I end up getting 69.4. So I'm just trying to get a grasp of where to land on in terms of the deficit.
Yeah, and I would just ask everyone not to focus too deeply on tonight's presentation. This was a very big, kind of high-level overview. The details are really found within our November 12th presentation. In that presentation, it really started to articulate some of the pluses and deltas with regards to available fund balance last year, use of fund balance this year, to overcome the deficit. So right now it is the 64 is the combination of overspending from last year and then under budgeting for this year. So I tried to get in one slide just for the public some thoughts moving forward, but it really is the details of the November 12th is where we're going to have to focus. So I can bring, I know you have a list of questions that we're still working on.
I submitted a lot of questions, and I know it may take some time to get through all of them in greater detail, but so just by next Tuesday, I'm going to add this question officially, if you want to add it to the board question log. What is the actual difference after these cuts are done? Because through my calculations, if I have 4.6 if it's the 60, but I just need to know what the actual balance is going to be, because I know it says 27, but I'm not understanding. And then these were going to be some of my questions to the resolution, but I will ask them now, and I do see that you're going to do a staff reduction analysis. Are you going to be presenting vacancies reflected as well? I'm still kind of confused about how this 5% is going to look like when we do have vacancies. And then even in our resolutions today, when I was reviewing them earlier, and I know that RAP came and spoke, but just looking at their positions only, we have one person retiring and 18 that are resigning, which was a total of 19 positions. So I'm just wondering how vacancies are being reflected in the actual cuts, and if you're going to be able to present us with that information at this HR committee.
Yes, the more detailed analysis of the reductions will be next Tuesday.
Okay. That was it for these two things.
Piggyback on that question. With resolution 446 and 447, these vacancies will go unfilled, and that will reduce the number of pink slips. Is that a fair statement?
So again, I just want to make sure that we're remembering a few things. So when I presented early on, one of the complexities of our budget deficit is the existing vacancies that we have on the books were already accounted for in our existing 19-20 budget. They were captured as a revenue for the district. So if you have that already captured in your budget, anything that you're doing with vacancies is not a value add to our existing deficit. So I just want to keep bringing everyone back to that point that the current 19-20 budget had baked into it already the existing vacancies based on past history of what we believe we could save with regards to personnel costs. So it's already there. So looking at these as a one-to-one is not going to work. Next week, we're able to provide more of the trickle-down effect because every single reduction has a trickle-down effect with tenure and the like. It's way too complex to get to now. Our team is working actively to look at that analysis, and that's why we're bringing as much as we can to the board next week.
Commissioner LeBron, then Commissioner Shepard.
Oh, sorry. So just another follow-up to, because essentially what Commissioner Powell was saying is what I'm asking too, but I guess I can understand that vacancies were not originally, they were kind of already cut out of the budget anyway in the 19-20 budget. However, I'm also asking, these are new people, again, that are resigning or retiring. And as these things come up, which they often do, we see these kind of frequently in terms of resignation and retirement resolutions. I would also, as you guys are doing an analysis, like to understand how this is going to counteract that portion of it as well, moving forward. So not just next Tuesday, but also what happens if we eliminate 38 positions and then next month, or even after January, we eliminate 38 positions and February we have 20 resignations, right? So how are we going to manage those things?
So we will be able to present on the impact of known retirements. The unknown is the quandary. We have no way of necessarily anticipating month by month what retirements we're going to receive. So we'll be able to provide an update on known retirements and the impact of towards our 5%. Beyond that, it gets a little tricky because I don't want to put us into a situation where we think we'll have another 50 retirements and it doesn't happen. Then it's Groundhog Day all over again where we have a 50 personnel issue that we're dealing with in our existing budget. So it's trying to get tight on what we know and using trend data to say how many retirements have we had in the past. But again, to impact an existing school year, we have to deal with the known. Looking at the 2021, we can do a much better analysis of how many retirements are we going to have this year, how does that impact our 2021 budget. But making reductions while we're in an existing school year, we have to stick as close to the known as possible.
Commissioner Shepard?
So I also just want to request that the answers that were given to the questions that I had asked, that they be reviewed again, because a lot of them were things that the responses just didn't answer my questions, so I still am unclear about a lot of stuff. So I'm not sure who answered them because it didn't have a name next to it. So I'm asking that they be looked at again and answered again more thoroughly. The next thing is, you had mentioned that at the HR committee, you're going to talk about the staff that are going to be affected and that they will be affected starting the week of December 1st. And so I wanted to know what would be the cost to wait until after January, because I am concerned about the holidays for our families. And so I just wanted to know what would be the cost if we waited until January, or if the staff that would be considered to be affected by these cuts the first week of December would have some type of severance pay or whatever. So that is my question. It doesn't have to be answered now, but I do want to know what that number is.
Noted.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, so just to kind of follow up a little bit on what Commissioner Shepard just said with the questions and the responses, typically in the board log, we do know generally which staff person did answer those questions, and these kind of came back blank, and I had the same feedback that they were not detailed enough for me. And also the first week in December, we're going to be focused on audit, so if we don't see the detailed plan first, although my understanding is that this board already passed that resolution to give you the permission to do it, we won't even be discussing it to the second week in December, technically, because the first week in December, we have audit and the CAFR. Again, I'm just kind of confused about the vacancies, because one of the questions that I did submit in writing was the cost of substitutes, that's substitute teachers, that is primarily being driven through vacancies versus absences, which I know that there was a media report that showed absences, and I'm glad some folks were trying to correct it, but I saw the data around absences versus vacancies, and I do think that at one point, several years ago, the district did have a drive for absences, but it also wasn't being calculated for the vacancies. Like, vacancies were also being calculated as absences. I would love for us to kind of clean that up internally anyway, to have a better understanding of what we actually need to pay for substitutes. But we're not there yet. But what I do know is that vacancies right now, again, is driving substitutes. So that's my concern, that we're saying we're going to make cuts in substitute areas and then we're going to do staff reductions. At what point do those two line up, and how do we get a hold and a grip of that when we don't have any systems in place at this moment to address that?
Yeah, and I'll have staff work with Ms. Lopez to get clarity on which questions Commissioner Shepard and Commissioner LeBron would like additional detail on. And then two, with the substitute piece, one, I've made a commitment and a non-negotiable that moving forward, they will be completely separate, that we'll have a personnel line item and a separate substitute line item. For our existing state, there are two worlds colliding that we have to realize our staffing reductions is one piece. In my presentation on November 12th, I articulated that we believe that we could recoup $4 million in substitute costs. We have to keep those separate, so as we think of the impact of substitutes going away, that goes towards that $4 million in a separate bucket, not commingled with the staffing. So the substitute reductions are things like looking at our policies for approving substitutes. If there's any staffing reductions that bump subs out of those, that goes towards our $4 million in recouping substitute costs. So we'll provide that analysis of how we're recouping subs, which is at 13, I mean, that's Potentially, if we had budgeted correctly and allowed everything constant, we would have spent $18 million in substitutes this year. We believe with these efficiencies that will come in way under that. That goes towards our under budgeting calculation of where we were and where we have to recoup those funds. So it is really intricate, and I'm with you, Commissioner LeBron. I've been wrapping my head around it over and over again. So we'll really articulate how those two worlds are really separate and what we're doing in the substitute bucket, in addition to the staffing reductions bucket.
Vice President Elliott?
Mr. Superintendent, can you talk a little bit about your Deputy Superintendent's diversity experience? Because I don't know Skinny Atlas and all those places if it represents a district like this. And I would probably be somewhat concerned that, you know, we are focused in on ensuring that Black and brown students are being served. And if she doesn't have the experience, or just if you would describe the diversity experience that she has coming in, because I can, you know, imagine that there may be, you know, some issues. And so if you could talk about her diversity background and the impact that she can have on the district with the diversity and the majority people of color in this district.
So I just want to uplift Ms. Quick's experience as a district superintendent of one of the more impoverished areas in all of the state of New York. So something I've been really studying is the impact of poverty in environments other than urban. So some of my colleagues across the state in more rural districts have less staffing and resources to combat the impacts of poverty in our country. So she does have extensive experience in her role as a district superintendent of that area that I can't pronounce, but the BOCES. Skinny Atlas is actually a pretty wealthy district. It's her district superintendent role where she had over 20,000 students across a region of the state. So our BOCES district superintendents are responsible for a variety of school districts across our state. So that's where I was really impressed with her experience in closing achievement gaps and the like in her leadership of that BOCES region as a district superintendent.
Let me be a little bit more pointed. What was the racial background of the people that she served? Because poverty and race are separate. So I just need to be clear on that, because while she may be coming in for, in terms of efficiencies, and I appreciate that, we want to make sure that the work that this board has led around diversity continues.
Absolutely. I can bring specific numbers. I don't have them in front of me. And at the end of the day, I ask that the board hold me accountable. I'm responsible for the executive cabinet and the roles that they fill. So it is my responsibility with this board's supervision to make sure that all of my folks are doing what they need to do on behalf of all students in Rochester. So hold me accountable to that. I'll bring specifics on demographics once I have those in front of me.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for our superintendent? Okay, let's move on to consideration of resolutions. I'm going to, where appropriate, try to block some of these things out. I appreciate our staff listing the resolutions. I need a motion to discuss resolutions 434 to 436.
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 434 to 436?
Yeah, I would like to
Commissioner
talk
Shepherd?
about 435 in executive session.
435 for executive session. All right, so I need to, can I get a motion to discuss resolution?
Motion to discuss resolution
Resolutions
435 and executive.
430, no, I don't need that yet. No. I just need a motion. I'm going to that the previous motion to discuss resolution 434 to 436 is not going to work. I need a motion to discuss resolutions 434 and 436.
So moved.
Been moved by
Seconded.
Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Commissioner LeBron. Any questions or comments regarding those two resolutions, 434 and 436? There being no further questions, all those in favor of resolutions 434 to 434 and 436 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
No for me.
Got that, Madam Clerk? All right, and we will reserve 435 for an executive session motion a little bit later. All right, I need a motion to discuss resolution 440. Before I do that, are there any, would there be any desire to have executive session conversations in regarding resolutions 445 to 449? Okay, so I need a motion to discuss resolution 445 to 449.
Move it.
And moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 445 to 449?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
On 447, is there a particular reason why so many people are resigning from the same position? Are they moving to something else, another position?
Can I add to that one?
Good evening, Commissioners. Again, there is no rationale, rhyme, or reason. Again, some of it could be related to the fact that the school year is about to end at a semester point. However, these are just the continuation of the attrition and the just day-to-day people wanting to move on to do different things. Okay.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, I know we discussed this before around the dates and giving people ample opportunity before we move forward with determining and so forth. And I know that these are resignations, but
Right.
some of these are coming from August. And so I just want us to look at how this process is also being impactful to us as a district and the budgeting, because if we have a staff person that's on the books for a salary, and then that creates a vacancy, and then we don't have a salary to fill that vacancy, and then we're kind of looking for I just want us to kind of look at cleaning up this process so that most organizations, we require 2 weeks' notice, and other outside entities, at the very minimum, no more than 30 days. But again, when I see these from like August, September, October, and we're now in November, some of these are actually ahead of today's date, which is a little odd, but I'm going to vote on these. There's
Yeah.
nothing I can do. These
Yeah.
folks are going to move on, but I just want us as a district to be mindful of this, and as the board and the superintendent.
The only comment I would make is that sometimes people just resign and they tell us later. And again, we can look into each individual case separately and can share with you that information. But again, from people just say one day I'm done and they don't tell anyone. But we could give you that detail.
Can I just respond very quickly, though? What I'm saying is, like, if they just abandon the job after 5 days and we make an attempt to reach them and they don't call us back or notify you, then we start the termination process. Like, I don't want to wait till November to terminate or move forward.
Yep, we got it.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, Mr. Kennedy, for clarification, is it possible, probable, or likely that the people whose names are listed with resignations in as far back as August were on either a family leave, FMLA, or some other leave, paid or otherwise, and just made a decision to convert that leave of absence into a resignation?
It is very well possible. And as I said, each case is separate. And so we would have to go back and can provide you with that detail. But those are some of the challenges of just managing this portfolio.
Yes, go ahead.
Even if it was FMLA, the resignation date would not be August. If they were on FMLA and then they just didn't return at all, there's a process for FMLA too, even
yeah.
for them to resign while under FMLA, there would be a different date.
Yeah.
All I'm asking for is a cleanup of that
we'll
process so
clean
that
it
we
up. We've got
have
it.
more accurate budget
Yep.
numbers and staffing cost. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, no further questions regarding 449 to 445 to 449? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 445 to 449, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition?
No to 448.
All right, let's move on to a discussion of resolution 451. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by? It's 451. 451. I need a second. Oh, thank you, Commissioner Powell. Any questions or comments regarding resolution 451? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolution 451 say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The ayes have it. We're going to reserve resolution 457 for executive session. I'll get a motion for that along with 435 in a minute. No, not now.
Okay.
We're going to save it for later. I do need a motion to discuss resolutions 458 to 463.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hallmark. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Powell, thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding resolutions 458 to 463?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner LeBron.
All right, here we go, because these are numbered, I believe it's letter F for 458, and 459, 460, would also say Saturday school, but that's a grant. So I guess I just want to talk a little bit about when I see expanded learning, and we've had these conversations around extended learning, and in particularly extended learning time grant, how we have not been paid from that grant in 2 years. That was part of the conversations around ELT, but then I see it here, and I just need clarification on how we have not been paid from our ELT grant, and that's part of why we are cutting ELT programs, but then I see it here, and part of the savings presented was extended learning time for high school students.
So this resolution is not for the same grant. It's not the same grant. It's the grant that we haven't received the funding for is the ESAP grant, Empire State After Schools Program. And we are working with trying to get the reimbursement for the past 2 years. We are actually closer to that now, but that is the one that we, still haven't received approval for this year. So we would have had to front the $1.2 million for those programs. This is an entirely different program.
So the presentation from the budget on Tuesday was actually 4.2 million collectively that was presented around extended learning. Although I know 700,000 was for the transportation, because I'm going to keep hounding on transportation for elementary. But the budget that was presented on the Tuesday's meeting in terms of the cost savings for ELT, because that was one of my questions.
It was 2 million. It was
there
one,
was two lines that were collectively for 4.2 if you added them. One was for 2.2 million and one was, I'll pull it up, it was one of my questions. And I specifically asked how that calculation was presented for extended learning, because it wasn't clear to me how did we get to that total number when I'm personally just interested in transportation for elementary students. But I did not number my questions, but give me a second because I pulled them up. Extended learning, it was presented 2.1 million, so the totality for ELT savings was presented as 2.1 million for transportation and then another 2 million for ELT, a combination of 4.1 million. So not 4.2 million, 4.1 million. So I'm just trying to understand how this fits into the cuts for extended learning when I see ELT here on resolutions.
So I'll have to go back and look at those notes, but for the ESAP grant itself was 1.2 or one, I don't have it in my memory, 1.2 or 1.3 million that we would have had to fund up front, and then it was an additional 700,000 in transportation costs for all of the those specific programs. This program here, I don't have the specifics, but Sheila may want to speak to this one, but this is an entirely different, the Saturday school is a different grant. But I can.
And I'm not sure it's really what the purpose is for. I just want to make sure that we're clear that in the budget presentation, anything that was going to hit our A fund was what we were really highlighting. So the upfront costs that we would have to pay for the ESEP grant, the costs in transportation and the like. This is a grant that we have secured. This would not hit our A fund. If we don't approve this, this would be loss of funding that we've already secured. So I just want to highlight that in the budget reduction analysis, it's really thinking about what's going to hit our A fund for costs that we just haven't been able to secure through grants. These are grants that we've secured, have the funding for, and would be coming out of those line items for this in particular grant.
So, just for clarification, you're talking about F, right? That one's the one that's coming. That's kind of a grant that we have, but the other one says New York State Extended Learning Time Grant. But the ELT, the New York State ELT grant is not the same as the Empire After School State Grant. Is that what you're saying? Not F. I 100% recognize that F is grant funded for
F and G.
Saturday school.
Yeah, F and G.
F and G. I didn't have questions about G because I saw it was kind of similar grant funding. But 459 also says ELT.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening. So School 23 is part of the extended learning time, and there is a grant for them. And so this is additional opportunities for students in their current extended learning program. And it is a grant.
But the New York State Extended Learning Time Grant is different from the Empire State After
Yes.
School?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you, guys.
Any other questions regarding resolutions 458 to 463? Yes,
Yeah.
Commissioner Davis?
I have a general question about additional pays. When I looked at some of the services and the time at which they'll be provided, some are like from 8 to 9 in the morning, some are like from 2:30 to 4:30. What is the workday for the educators that will be providing the services?
They vary by school to school. There's different bell schedules across the district, but where you see the earlier times, we would be looking at before school opportunities, and where you see the later times would be after school opportunities as it relates to their actual bell. So typically an hour before the arrival bell and typically an hour after the dismissal bell.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes, I had a question for Resolution 461, Part C. It just talked about giving funds to a staff to create lesson plans focusing on the integration of African American history into their core curriculum for Social Studies 7 and Social Studies 8. And so I was wondering, because it's an East EPO teacher, is this stuff just going to be for East, or is this district-wide? Because I know we have a lot of things moving in regards to curriculum, so I just want to have clarity on all the different parts that we keep paying people additionally to do different stuff with curriculum. Hi, hey.
I'm Steve, I'm the Social Studies Director. So yeah, Quentin just happens to work at East. It's not an East-specific project. It's curriculum and materials for the district. He just happens to work there during the day.
Any other questions regarding resolutions 458 to 463? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 458 to 463 say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
Okay, I am actually voting 461C no, but it still passes.
And, is she done?
Oh, no, wait, you're right.
461C.
Before you say it passed, let's hear from everybody else.
Oh.
Commissioner Davis?
I'm voting yes for 458, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so you got one no for 461. Commissioner Davis?
So it's a yes for 458, 460, 461, and 463. And the others are no.
I just want to clarify just the, for 461. I'm voting yes on the other ones in
all right.
461.
I would ask that my colleagues consistently communicate their votes, because some people are saying, I'm voting yes to certain ones and no. Always say what you're voting yes for, and then if I call the yes votes, and then I say no, you just communicate what your no votes are. Don't tell me what you are voting for. Just tell me what you aren't voting for. So, Commissioner, just so we're clear on this, Commissioner LeBron?
461C.
No. No.
No, on just that one portion.
And Commissioner Davis, just your no's.
459 and 462.
Got that? Repeat it one more time.
459, 462.
459, 462. No? Those are no's, right?
You said give the no's.
That's right. Yeah, those are no's. Yeah, I would ask my colleagues to always communicate your no's. That's the quickest way to figuring out whether we've got enough votes. All right?
No, no to all.
So, Madam Clerk, you take the time you need to, but we've had a variety of votes. I just want to make sure we have enough votes, 4 votes to pass them. You take the time to do that.
Could I ask a question while she's doing
Sure,
that?
sure.
So, I know that Commissioner Elliott says no to additional pays, and I say no to some additional pays as well. Could someone research to understand the additional pays that we provide? Is there another more cost-effective or more efficient way to address it, to address these additional services that take place before or after school? Is this the best way to address it? To address, Commissioner's concerns of these additional pays? So I just always want to know.
Yeah, we can look into that. That would be, we'd have to look at each in particular purpose of before and after an additional pays, but we can research it a little bit further.
So I assume, Madam Clerk, you've concluded, as I have, that there are enough votes to pass all those resolutions. All right, we're moving on to discuss Resolution 464 to 467. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hallmark.
Second.
Second by Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding Resolutions 464 and 467?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner LeBron?
I'm actually voting no on these because I didn't understand any of these, and I don't know if we had conversations around them, but I needed to understand how, for the first one, 464, what we talking about in 465. My understanding of food services is that it couldn't, for 466, that food services money could not be used on anything but food services, and the way I read this, it looked like it was going to be transferred either into our savings or our general fund balance, which, again, my understanding is that we're not allowed to do that with food services. Yeah, and then 468 through 471 are all withdrawn, but I just didn't understand this whole setup here and what we're trying to communicate.
Commissioner Day, could you explain the general approach involved in that? Looks like just somebody's reconciling.
Yes, it's reconciling, but Ms. Lehner can provide more detail.
This is as part of the closing of the 18-19 year, so this is the standard practice that's followed. It's all of the adjustments that are made to all the various lines. As you know, we've still been going through the closing of the 18-19 year. The CAFR is still in draft format, as you mentioned. So these are all of the final adjustments to close out the year. So each year we have these line item adjustments. It's just part of closing the year out. It's the shifts as they've made all the final payments and everything and made the final adjustments in the year. So these are the standard changes that are made just in the closing out of each year.
Commissioner Powell, and then I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Generally, at this time of year, the adjustments are often recommended by the auditors as adjusting entries. Are these the result of our auditors, our external auditors' review of our situation, and do they declare it to be their final list of adjusting entries? even though the CAFR is still in draft form?
I don't know if these were recommended by the auditor. I know that these were the final reconciliations as they were closing the year out. I can provide some additional information on each of these if you'd like. I don't have the detailed information, but I can get it tomorrow and provide it to you.
Next question. Is there any harm done in tabling these?
Absolutely not.
Motion to table.
I'll second that if it's okay.
A motion to table goes directly to a vote. All those in favor of Commissioner Powell's, is there a second for Commissioner Powell's?
I second.
motion? Yes, thank you. You did, Commissioner LeBron, thank you.
Yes. President, do you need a date certain for the table?
You don't have to, as I understand it, but it would make good sense. Can we get a date for your motion? What next date could we give it? Tuesday? What date is that?
That's not the same date that we're discussing the CAFR.
No, December 4th is the CAFR.
I would feel more comfortable with, if I had to name a date certain for the date that we review the CAFR.
Any problem with that?
Because
No
we'll
problem
have
with
an
that.
opportunity to ask the auditors directly rather than ask for some.
So what's the date on that meeting?
December 4th.
December 4th? Do you have any problem with that, Mr.? Okay. So as I understand your motion, Commissioner Powell, your motion is to table resolutions 464 to 467 to December the 4th?
Correct.
Is that right? Is there a second? There was a second to that motion. I think it was Commissioner LeBron. A motion to table goes directly to a vote. All those in favor of Commissioner Powell's motion to table resolutions 464 to 467 to be brought back to the table on December the 4th, 2019, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there any nays?
Which was the one that you called? Which ones?
464 and 467.
So just those two?
Just those,
No.
464 through 467.
Oh, okay.
Through,
I'm
not
sorry.
to, yeah.
464 through 467. That was your motion, correct?
Yes.
All right. And are there any nays? All right. Those series of resolutions are tabled again, to be clear, 464 to 467, and they will be brought back to the table on December the 4th, 2019. I now need a motion to discuss resolutions 472 to 473.
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Any questions or comments regarding these particular resolutions? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of resolution 472 to 473 say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right, the ayes have it. Next, need a motion to discuss resolutions 474 and 475. Is there a motion? Commissioner Hallmark, thank you again. Is there a second? Commissioner Powell. Any questions or comments regarding these educational facilities resolutions 474 and 475?
Yeah, we were given a map, Mr. President, so could someone explain the map to us?
Wait, is that within one of these?
You gotta make it worth your while showing up at
I
these
know,
meetings.
but were we just talking about this?
475.
I gotcha.
Are you making light of my work with the colored pencils? So that's attached to the resolution for the possible purchase of the parcel next to, on University Ave, next to 58 School.
Which is the old Kentucky Fried Chicken?
It's, yes.
Property?
Several different restaurants, yes.
Well,
Most recently,
I go
I
back into
think,
the 70s. I used to work there.
Asian Delight or something.
Yeah, I used to work there in the 70s, so.
So what we tried to do is just try to give you a sense to scale of what the opportunities were for that piece of that parcel. There's two different renditions there, kind of showing a play space. The field that resembles the soccer field is by no means full size. If you've driven by that parcel, you can't fit a full field in there. And we're just trying to show that you can have multiple play spaces for kids, mainly the elementary portion of the K-12 building. The other struggle there is, but with one gymnasium, it's very difficult to move all those students through physical education. So we are looking at an option of putting a very small additional structure there that we could do phys ed in for elementary students as well. So by no means is it in any more than number 3 pencil, but it does give you a schematic as to what the possibilities are. And then also addressing the site on the Scioto Street side, where we currently have parking, very small amount of grass space, and a playground. So it would be a kind of a complete site work. And then the last piece is the parcel will at some point butt up against the the inner loop work, and then that green space would be obviously much larger.
So this
That's
is,
well down the
is
line.
this outside or inside?
It's outside.
Outside?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My concern is that area where a lot of traffic is.
What we're going to do is, certainly by having that area, we're going to make sure that we build a structure around that, so that the kids certainly can't get out into that area. We also looked at that area for parking and kind of reversing the lot.
Yeah, that's what I thought we had talked about a few years ago.
One reason why the restaurants never made it there is you can't get in and get out. So we really did not feel comfortable with having people kind of driving in and out of there with the buses and
right.
everything else. It just isn't a great situation. So I think we'll revert back to SIO where it's much safer and we can have much more control about coming in and out of the building.
Okay.
The project will be in the out years, so we'll purchase the parcel now, we'll submit the project to State Ed, and then the whole piece of it, purchase, demolition, and all the work would all be aidable at 98%.
Do we have, we're in this budget crisis, and we've got to pay a local share to this, right? Is it 2%?
You'd be paying 2% of what the total cost of the project would be. We would not be able to determine that tonight, but when we submit the documentation, we would get 2% on that, the total cost of the construction.
Yeah, I'm still always concerned, because, we're talking about 30 million, 60 million, and, when we continue to add those costs, it takes it higher. So I'm a little sensitive to it. Even though, we're getting 98% back, we still got to pay 2% of it. So
We felt
I
compelled
just want to make
after-
sure that people are aware that that's,
Absolutely.
that it's in people's radar that, even though it's 98% aidable, we've got to pay 2%, and we may not have the 2% in order to pay it. So I'm just making a statement.
Understood.
That's it.
Yeah.
No responses necessary.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, so I just want to say I appreciate the visuals to the resolution and your drawing and coloring. However, I would like to make a request that the final actual layout is voted on by the parents and the students at 58 and our
Sure.
teaching staff there and our administrators, primarily because they're going to have to live with the design of this versus this board making the decision on their behalf. So I see that they have two options. I would like them to be presented with the two options.
Absolutely. There are many more options we'll look at. That was just to give you a sense of what the
Okay.
possibilities were, and they certainly will be involved in any project that we do.
Please, I would love to have them involved and have them make the final decision on the space for their school. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I was just looking at this thinking that this was just sort of a concept thing. We're not voting on any particular layout, right? This is just, we're supporting the costs associated with doing this work.
It's me on my kitchen counter trying to figure out how to make it look
Gotcha.
nice.
Commissioner Powell?
I just want to piggyback on what you said about, we know that the city is exploring filling in more of the inner loop, and if that happens in the near horizon, we could be accomplishing a much larger footprint for School 58. And that could happen before we are ever able to get School 58 back into the capital improvement loop. Did World of Increase get a double MCA?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we're really, they only.
It's eligible for capital work now. The MCA is
The
reset.
5 years,
Yes,
it's been 5
absolutely.
years since
Yes.
the FMP work was done.
Yep.
The bottom line, though, is you're only asking the authority to purchase the land today.
Correct.
That's all we're asking for today.
The dollar figure is purchase and then tax and closing costs and so forth. And all of it's part of the package and all of it will be reimbursable.
So we are asking to approve 254?
$254,000.
I still got a $30 million gap, so I'm just, it just gets me in my gut.
That's reimbursable by
Yeah, okay.
The whole piece will be reimbursable, yes, but not until the project is actually completed.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing? So, I just wanted to add, so this is cash capital funding, so this is not the general fund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to just clarify. No, I understand. And you'll remember that one of the areas of potential reduction is cash capital. The city is going to potentially allow us to change the charter agreement. So what we did was we looked at our total cash capital balance, and we had like about 26 million because it crosses years, we are only allowed to take 10 million of that towards our budget deficit. So although this is using some of the cash capital, we will still be able to use the 10 million towards our deficit as long as the city approves that. Just wanted to clarify that.
Commissioner LeBron?
So just for clarification, because that was one of my questions around the cash capital, the 10 million that they may allow us this year to use, is that it wasn't going to impact any projects for cash capital that have already been planned, and then some that are coming up, like lead testing for the water in the schools.
That's
I just
correct.
want to make sure that that's not going to have any negative impact in us taking 10 out of that.
No, we actually evaluated all of the different projects that were going forward. There were some that we just put on hold. One of the big ones was the replacement of, we had been setting funding aside for a couple of years towards the replacement of our PeopleSoft system. So we said, we're going to pause on that. First of all, we need a CFO, we need some stability, we can't go through a major financials upgrade right now. So that, we had 4 million set aside for that. So that was 4 of the 10. So in looking at the rest of the balance, we were really able to maintain the majority of the projects going forward.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Davis?
On 474, did the vendor meet the MWBE requirements?
For sure.
Yes.
13.6.
Yes, they did.
Any other questions regarding resolutions 474 to 475? There being no further questions, all those in favor of resolutions 474 to 475 say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, looks like the ayes have it. Mr. Schmidt, I want you to know you threw me for a loop. I got one of your texts, but it came in the evening, and I'm just not used to that. I don't know if you all know what I'm talking about, but.
I thought you stopped doing that.
Okay, all right. I thought maybe my watch was off, but thank you. That was a good one too, by the way.
Oh, that's right. I haven't gotten them in a while. What's up?
Well, you got one this evening, which is really it threw me. I was like, what happened? So you
I haven't gotten in a few days, probably a week or so. What's up? Come on now.
Okay. All right. See, it's become such a tradition
I
that
forgot
people,
about it, yeah.
right? All right.
The preacher.
All right. I need a motion to discuss resolution 476 to 486. Is there a motion? Thank you, Commissioner Hallmark. Second is Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 476 to 486?
Yes.
Yes, I'll just start here. Mr. Vice President Elliott.
477, and again, in light of, this is a small amount, but in light of our budget situation that we're in, where is the parent liaison in this situation? And could a parent liaison do this work instead of us vendoring the work out?
Good evening. I'm standing in for Chief Turner. If a parent liaison could do this work, that I'm not sure. I can tell you that the youth development specialist has been in existence with the Center for Youth and partnering with our New Beginnings program since 2012. They do individual group counseling, conflict resolution, violent prevention, home visits with parent engagement, which could be the parent liaison, assist with transportation, suspensions, alternatives to suspensions, restorative practices, community building activities. So there's a whole list of work that they do with the students, and then there's some evidence supporting that work throughout the years. So whether a parent liaison could do this level of work, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would argue that they wouldn't be able to. Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Primarily because of the population that we're speaking of. So this is for our Youth and Justice New Beginnings program. It takes a special skill set to work with these young men and in increasing time on task and their learning throughout the year. So that's why it's really through the Center for Youth for this in particular program.
I would agree with that. They also do work around gang-related issues, drug and alcohol abuse, and those type of things as well.
And, we were working our way down. Commissioner LeBron?
Yep, thank you. Just regarding Resolution 479, and I don't actually have any specific questions on this one, other than when I was reading this, and I've always supported OASIS and will continue to support OASIS and all the work that they do. But I also know that statewide and countywide, we've been having conversations about the integration of systems. And Terry, I know that you participated in one of those with our Congressman Morelli, who was kind of leading some of that conversation around integration of systems. And I bring this up because Career Start, another great organization, does get funding currently from the county, from the Department of Human Services, also for job placements. And I just wanted to understand if we had any understanding of how these agencies the funding are aligning, and if we're having conversations about that. So working sometimes with the population who may be receiving social services benefits, Career Start may already be getting funding to do job placements with this same very population. And now because they're coming from a different organization on the district side, perhaps our two organizations may not be having conversations. So I just wanted to flag this as an opportunity for us to potentially have a conversation with the county, and then OASIS at another time to sit down and figure out what's being funded, because perhaps that funding can then be funneled to support students in a different way at OASIS than in this way. So I just want to throw that out there because we've been having lots of integration conversations, and this one was one that I've actually never thought about, but I've thought about Medicaid and other services we provide, but just throwing that out there for future conversation for all of us.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments regarding resolutions 476 to 486?
For 476, this says contingent upon grant funding, and so I just wanted to reiterate, because I do bring up a lot, that just because the funding is not there or the funding stopped doesn't mean that the need stops. And so I wanted to know if the grant does not come through, what happens to the duties of this particular job?
Yeah, we'd have to, I would like to ask Ms. Turner to really speak to that. So we know that this would, if this is not approved, then we would have to come back and speak with the board directly about what we would do in its stead. But I would love for Ms. Turner to address that. Thank you.
Mr. Burke, when was the event that you have? I want to make sure it gets on my calendar. January 16th. Okay, thanks. It's always a wonderful event. And Mr. Burke, you know we appreciate you and your staff's work. You've been working through a number of different circumstances, and sometimes the support is there, and sometimes I think you guys get frustrated that it's not, but never underestimate the appreciation that people have for the work that you provide to our non-traditional students. Your graduation ceremonies are always very inspirational. So since you're standing here, I know you don't come here too much. I wanted, on behalf of the board, to thank you for the good work that you do. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
476 was just, the question was just raised. This is a grant that we have not yet secured, but we're asking to spend money on it now. Is there any reason that this must be before us today?
It would be permission to move forward if the grant funding comes in. So if grant funding does not come in, we're not going to be spending money without board approval. So
this is a resolution requesting permission to engage in a contract, not to actually spend the funds?
no,
Sometimes we have resolutions to authorizing the process of engaging in a contract as opposed to executing a contract. If this is a resolution to engage in a contract with a contingency clause, I'm okay with that. But otherwise, we're committing A funds that are under dialogue right now.
I just wanted to, this is Chief Turner's resolution, but I just wanted to, if you look to the end of the resolution language, It says, for a sum not to exceed $60,000 contingent upon grant funding and budget appropriations, and contingent upon the form and terms of the agreement. So this is contingent upon grant funding. So this would not go forward with a funding. It is contingent upon the grant. I think that the approval process, they've been waiting for it, and I believe that she's expecting it to be, I believe she had a verbal approval. They're expecting it to come through any day. So, but this would not go forward, and it does state that it's contingent.
And I would love for us to move forward with more like these, just so that we're not getting into the concerns that Commissioner LeBron raised of dates passing and the like. So we have kids in need of services. So by approving contingent upon funding, we don't have the issue of why did something start without board approval. So again, that contingent upon funding, I think, holds us firm. That this would not be spending anything outside of budget appropriated through grant funding.
Any other questions regarding resolutions 476 to 486? Start here again, Commissioner Davis.
A question on 484, the Pearson curriculum. I was wondering, what was the median score for rigor for the 3-5 and the K2?
Please repeat your question.
What was the average score for rigor? As I saw, there's 1 to 15 items that were used to score.
This is the textbook?
Yeah, the reading program. So there is one to measure for people's opinion about the rigor of the program. So I was just wondering, what was the average score for rigor for the 3-5 and for the K2?
Hi, good evening. We had a rubric that was...
If you could just say who you are so that it's recorded on the record, that's okay.
Sandra Galbato, Director of Reading.
Thank you.
Karen Fay, Executive Director of ELA and Integrated Literacy.
Thank you.
On the rubrics that were shared with you in your binders, you can see where each of these things fell. I don't have the answer to that question, to the rigor question right now, but I'll go back and look at the rest of the data. The data that you have in your binder is a condensed version, but I can get that.
And my second question is on the K2, the rubric there was 82%, but on the 3-5, it went down to 58%. And I was wondering which of those 1 through 15, what are those parameters contributed to the drop?
There were different people who did the evaluation. We had a K2 group and a 3-5 group who did the evaluation. The K2 teachers ranked the Pearson very highly. The 3-5 teachers didn't rank it as highly, but when we added the scores together, it came out to be the highest performing product. One of the things that you'll notice in your notebook is that we color-coded, because we were looking for a district-wide program. One of the criteria that we looked for was that it had a completely complementary Spanish program so that it could be used in our bilingual schools. And so the red lines where in 3-5, Scholastic did not have scored the highest in 3-5, but did not have a complementary Spanish program. So it was taken out of the running because we wanted a single program for the entire district.
And on the other graph, I noted that some parents, on the graph for the parents, the parent response, that 20% of our parents said that they didn't think that the curriculum reflected the identity of their children. And another 20% said that maybe some reflects those 60%. So there's 40% of our parents who didn't feel that it reflected the identity of their children. And then there was, again, from the parents, that 40% didn't think that the curriculum responded to their child's needs.
So Pearson scored the most highly in that category, and what we knew when we started is that there was work to do on some of this curriculum, and so we're adapting some pieces of it to make sure that with the Pearson product, we can choose our literature. We can choose some of the strategies that we use, and so we're working closely with Dr. Jason Willis, who's our Director of African American Studies, and with Gaia Shakes, who's a consultant of ours, to make sure that we are meeting that. So it's not going to be delivered as scripted with only certain texts. We're really working hard to make sure that it does meet those things. Pearson was the best of the top 3, but certainly has gaps. And we knew that going in, that to find a scripted program, it was going to be a challenge.
And my only final comment is I did, look at the books that were available from the program. And I just have a question, and maybe you just answered it. When there's something that's historically difficult to talk about, so there was one section where a book was talking about Christopher Columbus and how Christopher Columbus met the people where he landed. And it ended saying that they exchanged, greetings, etc. So that's where it ended. It didn't tell the full story. The way it was set up sounded like it was a good thing.
And
their exchange was good.
Yeah, and this is where I just love the power of social media. So if you go back and look at what our teachers are saying, particularly around Columbus Day and even Thanksgiving, they are really taking on the task of various perspectives and point of view and digging deeper into historical documents and the like. So I want to reiterate what our colleagues are saying, that I've yet to find a curriculum that is going to meet the needs of all students, particularly students here in Rochester City. So we're providing this as a resource, but not as the only literature that our students will be receiving in their elementary experience. So those offer great dialogues for the classroom. So as we look at lesson planning and the like, this is the power of teams to really dig into what is the next page of the story. My kids come home with that often. So the story ended here. What comes next? And how do you do some research and the like to add to that? So the other piece I want to bring up as we move into digital literacy, something that we're trying to really instill in our students is that what you read on paper or via the internet is not always fact. In fact, most of the times it's not. So how do you really validate and support with evidence what you're reading to distinguish fact versus opinion and the like? So I agree with you, Commissioner Davis. There's going to be stories in our text for literature. There's going to be stories in our text for history and the like, but we're really trying to equip our young ones with the ability to do research and question instead of reading everything as actual fact.
Commissioner Powell, and then we'll go back this way.
Yes, thank you. I have to go back to Resolution 476, the grant that's not yet been received. And I understand your explanation, Commissioner Dave, and in the spirit of being helpful, I have to point out that it's one thing for the grant funding to be formalized and for us to receive a grant letter. It's another thing for the budget appropriations to come in. The appropriation, we only amend our budget 4 to 6 times a year. We don't amend our budget every month. And for that language to appear in the resolution could potentially delay the actual service delivery. I would, if I might suggest an amendment to strike the words "and budget appropriations," understanding that the language that follows, contingent upon the form and terms of the agreement approved by council, will be the oversight that we need to ensure that we that the funds, once we receive the approval letter, that we could actually go ahead and begin to execute this contract.
Not exactly sure what is meant by, if you were to take that term out, budget appropriations, why would you want to take that out? Because it's one thing to get the money, it's another thing to appropriate it. So
And
I
we
think they're
don't,
speaking
and
about.
we don't appropriate funds mid-year except after the fact. And from the point we get the letter approving the grant, let's say we got that letter tomorrow, we won't be doing a budget amendment for a number of months. And if this language remains in there, you can't execute this until after we pass the budget amendment. If we strike those three words, and budget appropriations, that allows our legal department to determine whether, in fact, the award letter is sufficient to support this contract.
So, Carl, what do you think? Do you hear what?
I do.
The lack of a budget appropriation, if you were to retain that language, would permit the district to actually offset as against the ultimate cost, any amount that we were unable to appropriate to support it. It's a remedy that we have against the contractor in the event there's not a sufficient appropriation to support the contract. Now, it's rarely exercised, but just understand that, you know, if we delete those words, and in fact there is not a budget appropriation, we're still going to be bound to that contract.
Okay, so I see that you're looking at it from the standpoint of Center for Youth as
Yes, otherwise, whether or not we proceed with the contract in the absence of a grant would really be up to the contract administrator. It wouldn't be a matter, you know, our office doesn't police that. That's for the actual contract administrator who's designated in the contract to implement its terms, you know, on behalf of this.
So if we were to take that out of there, the vendor here could think, oh, you gotta give us his money.
Yes, sir.
But without contingent upon grant funding, how could they hold us to it without a grant approval letter?
What if the grant approval letter contains a condition with which we subsequently cannot comply with? In that circumstance, and if the board is unable to appropriate, we might still be bound to pay. That's my suggestion is retain the language as is. If the board wishes to do otherwise, you certainly can. There's nothing illegal about it. Just have your eyes open that, you know, you lock yourself in more than perhaps you have to by eliminating a condition preceding to payment.
I understand what you're saying, and that maybe that's language that would stay in the contract, but how do you react to what I said about the fact that we don't amend our budget but a couple of times a year? To actually begin spending this before we do a budget amendment would mean that there are people in this building who would then be violating the board's budget.
Every time we deposit a grant in an account by that logic, we would not be able to expend those funds for services until there is an actual appropriation.
But usually
the appropriation often, as I understand it, reflects what has actually happened by reason of funds being deposited. I don't believe that our implementers have to wait with respect to every grant until there's an actual budget appropriation. That would serve to slow down the provision of services.
Well, the reason
But this is we're getting a little beyond my area of expertise. That's about as close as I am. I am always cautious, however, of depriving the board of every opportunity in the event we have a budgetary reversal to escape from a contract that we can't afford.
And I only raise that usually we usually don't spend money until we've gotten the grant award. And I'm not sure that I've ever seen that particular phrase in a resolution only because we typically don't get a request like this until the grant is a certainty.
I can't answer that just offhand. I'd be happy to do the research and advise you accordingly. But as we stand right now, that my belief is that it's not a good idea to eliminate that language.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I also wouldn't want to change the language because I kind of read this a different way than what was explained earlier and what's being explained now, is that I read this as there is funding that whoever put this for, I see it as Chief Turner, that she might still put funding into these job duties before a grant came, and that whatever was to exceed or to exceed the 60,000, it would be contingent upon grant funding. What the actual final amount would have been is how I actually read this. So I wouldn't want to change the language without having a clear answer on what she actually meant, because that's how I took it.
We have late breaking news.
Are you Wolf Blitzer now?
Please. Yes, so the grant money did come through and it has been loaded into the budget. Yes.
Go ahead, repeat that, please. I missed that.
The grant came through and it was loaded into the budget. We're good to go.
So there's a budget code now.
Yes.
Huh? No, I didn't see it. Commissioner LeBron?
Thank you. Oh my goodness. So I want to kind of go, I had been asking to speak since Commissioner Elliott had spoke around the book, the K2 through 2 reading curriculum and some of the questions you had. I just wanted to point out though that the staff did set up a room up here with all of the materials and the books. So I appreciate that they put these responses and all the matrix. Some of this information was available in that space, but I particularly went to go see the materials for myself, even though my daughter's in 3rd grade and she's moving on to 4th. She won't go through this, but my grandson will potentially in a couple of years. So I do want to say one of the things I noted, even as a parent and a grandparent, is the diversity of the materials that was presented in the book up here, in the areas up here. So I just wanted to highlight that, and I don't want folks listening to kind of think that the material is not as diverse as it was. It's probably the most diverse reading program I've seen come through this district. Some of it, like they mentioned, we get to select which ones we're going to be picking. And I did give them direct feedback, which ones we should be majoritarily picking, because I want to see that diversity reflected in the books that our children are exposed to, whether it's reading, mathematics, social studies, history. I want all the diversity that they can get around them. So I just want to throw that out there, and kudos to the staff. They kept that up there for a couple of weeks. And so we were able to also submit questions that way, but I just want to point that out there.
Any other questions or comments regarding resolutions 476 to 486? Commissioner Davis? Yep.
I just wanted to share that I also did review the materials that were in the room, and it was materials in there that had historical information that would be difficult for conversation. I just wanted to know if the district was going to prep educators to be able to address those issues. I was also concerned because the Distinguished Educator Report has, uplifted that the center of problems here in the district is institutional, individual, and structural racism. So to read that 20% of parents did not see in the materials the racial identity of their child, and 20% said they saw some. So 60% of our parents said they saw the identity of their children in the materials, and 40% said that it didn't respond to their child's needs. So for myself, what's more important is to address racism in the district, and those percentages are significant to me. Plus, I still, did you add to the question log the rigor? I'd like to know what the average number was. So for myself, I can't support the resolution. And those are some of the things I just wanted to lift up. I did look at the materials.
So Van, just to clarify some of the data that she's talking about, because I have my book with me, it's no, so 20% actually said no. I don't know what the racial makeup was of the groups of parents that you guys utilized to come in and look at this. And 20% said some, and 60% said substantial. And if I was one of these parents being surveyed right now, again, as a parent with a child currently in this district, I would say it was substantial enough for me. However, that's not to take away from the 20% that said no, absolutely not. Nothing that they could see in terms of reflecting the racial, ethnicity, cultural identity of their child. And then the 20% that did say some, I would probably speak with them a little bit further, and you can take both groups and try to work with them around the materials that we purchase for this reading program. But I just wanted to put that out there, because it's not necessarily that 40% said no, 20% said no, and 20% said some, 60% said substantial.
You have to step up to the mic.
Tab 2 in your binder, those are the list of parents that were there.
Could you again state your name just so that
Oh,
everybody knows?
Sandra Galbato.
That's okay. That's okay. Vice President Elliott?
Yeah, they mentioned the consultant by the name of Gail Shakes.
Okay.
And Gail Shakes is very knowledgeable when it comes to the issues of our history, the African American history. And so I think to Commissioner Davis's point, if we have some inquiry, then probably she would be the person that we could have a conversation with, because I do know that she is knowledgeable in this area. So she may be the person that we speak with directly.
She is part of our team as
Yeah,
well.
I know
So
you
we will
mentioned her
definitely
name.
Utilize her.
But the board members maybe need to speak with her directly.
Because I think, as Superintendent Dave mentioned, I think there will have to be some adaptability. There will have to be some, like you said,
Definitely.
revisions to make it pertinent for our situation.
Definitely.
All right, excellent. Any further questions or comments regarding resolutions 476 to 486? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 476 through 486 say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Yes, I'll just give you the no's.
All right, thank you.
Okay. 476, 477, 480, 481, 482, 484, and 485.
All right. There is no unfinished business from a previous meeting. There is no new business. There is the business of executive session. I will need a motion to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, a matter related to a particular person.
Motion.
Oh, matter related to a particular person, and we need to get some advice from our legal counsel. Is that a motion, Commissioner Hallmark?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and is that a second, Commissioner LeBron? All those in favor say aye. I just want to wish everybody, on behalf of the entire Board of Education, a very happy Thanksgiving. We have much to be thankful for, especially when it comes in the form of a turkey and sweet potato pie, which I hope my wife is listening. All right, everybody have a good weekend. God bless. If anybody's interested in seeing how we vote once we come out of executive session, we'll be on the second floor. Have you decided what you're going to do in terms of cooking? Because didn't you say sometimes you... What's going to...